Hello, I'm Shelley Rothus, and I'm a different kind of victim. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about trust. Now, as we recall, the word trust goes in the word respect. Are they real? Are they empathetic? Are they safe? Do they have personal integrity? Is it equal? Communication, trust. There is no trust without the others. That's just how it goes. So, everybody's probably wondering, so she's never felt trust before? No, not really. Usually, trust, what's the first people that you would usually have trust for? That would usually be your caregivers, your parents. Well, that never happened for me. I never really had trust because what does the word trust actually mean? It means that that person is reliable, they're truthful and honest with you, and they have the strength, which is like personal integrity, to do that and fulfill it no matter who is involved. Not one single one of my abusers had any of that within them. So that's what I was raised with. I thought I knew what trust was. I thought. But it really wasn't trust. It wasn't a good, healthy relationship with either three of my abusers. Yes, throughout my whole life. So, the one person that I thought it was trust was my father. But it really wasn't. So, how did I come to really realize that the trust I thought was actually trust, a good, healthy trust, that was actually not good? So, yes, I'm going to be bringing in Ken into this as for comparison with my father. Now, with my father, even when I was a young child, the number one person that came above everyone, including me, especially me, since I was the one that they continuously abused, was my mother. That's right. My father always put my mother above all, especially when it came to me. It was her way, and that was it. You hear people say, that the father always said, go ask your mother. You know, when my dad said that, he meant it literally. Even if, I mean, heck, my mom probably could say that she was gonna, you know, hang me or something. My dad would say, okay, you know, as long as my mother said, that's what we're doing, that's what my dad did. Yes, my dad did not have any personal integrity. He did not have any. Was he real? Mm, I guess his real was just who he was. He wasn't real to himself. My father always did for my mother, even if it didn't benefit him or even if it did him negatively. He'd always do for my mother. So, even if it was something that would harm him or hurt him and not do any good for him, he'd still do it. So, most parents, you hear them say, they're always going to put their children first. Not with my dad, especially. So, what did I see in my father that made me think of him so highly? What I saw in my father was what he showed me behind my mother. He showed me that he loved me. he showed me that he really cared about me. It was almost like a little secret, you know? Like I had mentioned how I had shared with my dad about my birthday and how my mother and sister had ruined it on me with their abuse, and he showed me empathy until he was right back underneath the ringleader, my mother, and that just all went out as though it didn't happen. Well, that's exactly how it was with my father. I got used to that. I got used to my mother being on top. So I just thought that was normal. I thought that was normal, and that's how it was all everywhere. I thought the mother was always in top, the wife. That was it. And that's not really true, because in a relationship, it should be equal, even in parenting. That's where a big problem is parents need to be equal with each other. It shouldn't be one above the other. In this case, my mother was always way above everybody else. So, what problems did that lead to? Led to my father doing abusive things to me, which was involving lies that ended up harming me. That's right. My father watched me get harmed, and also he began to participate in those abusive acts that ended up harming me. Because, that's right, the ringleader says so. So, were there times that my father did try to stick up for me? Yes, I remember those very few times where my mom was gonna, did something that was not right, and there was times that she was planning on not letting me do things that I should have been allowed to do. That my father was like, I mean, I would hear it secretly. They didn't know I overheard, but I would hear my dad arguing for me, and trying to talk, you know, not arguing, yelling. He would be like, come on, and trying to get my mom to, persuade her, you know. So there were times that he tried a little bit. So I just always got used to my father just going along with my mother. So I always felt like I was under. But what did I do? I ignored that. I acted like it was normal. I just ignored that that was happening and tried to make believe that my father loved me equally, when in actuality, that wasn't real, because it wasn't, like I said in the word respect, equal. My love for him was complete, while his was, because you can't be equal, and, where he would always put somebody else above me. That's personal integrity. Even though he knew it was wrong, he would always go boop right underneath the ringleader. So, trust. I didn't have that. He wasn't real. Empathetic, like I said in that other topic with communication. Just a little bit. And S, safe. How could I feel safe with somebody who's not real? You you can't. All those, he wasn't real, because it wasn't real love. You know, I mean, he always put my mother above me, even when he seen wrong being done to me. So how could I feel safe? I didn't feel safe with either one of my abusers. I never felt safe with my mother or sister, period. With my dad, I had hope, a little bit of hope, that he would eventually change and see his errors of allowing my mother and my sister to continue to do what they've been doing to me. Instead, it turned out the opposite way, which is really hard for me to say. He ended up becoming more and more like my mother and sister. and how he treated me. So, personal integrity. My dad doesn't have any personal integrity, because a person who's a parent that would watch their child get abused from such a young age, that does not, that means that they have absolutely no personal integrity. Equal. There was no equal when it came to me and the three of them. Communication, like I described in the topic of communication with my father compared to what I described with Ken, my dad didn't show any emotions of much happiness or, you know, sadness or openness. I mean, I tried numerous of times throughout my life to talk to my father. It didn't get anywhere. I mean, talking to my dad, it was like this. I'd come, you know, here I am walking in. This is my dad, you know, and there's me, you know, hi dad, how was your day? And this is him. I'm busy, Shelley. I'm tired. Leave me alone. Yeah. Mm, uh, mm. That's what I get from him. Or if he's eating. Exactly. So I got used to that. I just, I basically got used to it. And I didn't see it as wrong. I knew it was wrong deep down inside, but like I said, in my imagination, I just tried to pretend that stuff didn't happen with my father. I also kind of relate it to just how the male gender is. So that's going to be coming up with another thing in comparison with what I brought up in the last video as for the bullying incident and as for the gift giving with Ken versus my father and Father's Day. So now we're going to compare the trust issue with why I trusted Ken, as to where he was different from the beginning. Like I said, he changed from Unshorn Wizard to Unshorn Contasinova to Pubrisly Diarist. Okay, now the Unshorn Wizard I did know in the beginning. Like I said, he responded in an empathetic way and as though he was listening, unlike what I just described as for my father. So, to me, that showed something different. And I actually got that feeling like, wow, somebody actually is being empathetic and that's showing that they care. It's like, I never really got that even from, you know, relationships with females. Like I said, it was always a challenge with them, or they just, was the ordinary, blah, blah, blah type of responses where you didn't get much out of it. It wasn't interesting, and it was just, you know, like somebody saying, how's your day? How you doing? I'm fine. Okay. That type of response. That's, your normal average response. That's where Unshorn Wizard at the time was different in his responses. They were more interesting, inspiring, and something you can actually think about and bring out more in your mind. So more creativity, I should say, and more creative. So now, as for being real, it seemed like he was more real than what I normally knew. Like with my father in comparison, he was more real as to talking about himself and opening up and relating to things that I described about myself. My father, if I talked about anything personal, I never got a response about anything. Even if I asked him directly anything about his family, just curiosity about, my grandmother, his mother, nothing. He never wanted to even talk about family. With Unshorn Wizard at the time, if I asked him a certain question about, family or anything, just anything I wanted, advice about, you know, he gave me really good, solid advice, you know, and was open and honest and even gave me something personal a little bit. My dad, on the other hand, nothing. So it was just like, my hand on my head, like, So that's where it was different. That's where, I was, you can see why the trust was building is because I never had that with my father. So it was a different feeling and I actually liked it. I was like, wow, this is different. It's like, this is what I want with all my relationships, and that's where I, started thinking, wow, there's really something wrong here. I'm not quite sure, maybe he's, Unshorn Wizard or Ken at the time. Maybe he's just a totally different person. I don't know. Maybe he was a Martian from another planet. I wasn't sure because I wasn't used to people being like that. So I was like, okay, so he's a Martian from another planet. So, anyways, okay. Now, as for said that he was real, empathetic, safe. With the first two, yes, I did start feeling safe because, like I said, I had shared something with him that I didn't share with many people for from years back, like 2019, that he never used against me. So, yes, I felt that he was safe. I thought he was trustworthy based, on that, and also him sharing stuff with me that was personal about him, that he trusted me with certain things. So, that's where I thought the trust would have been more equal as to where I wouldn't share stuff that he shared with me that was personal and that he wouldn't want others to know and never told others, most likely, as I thought he would with me, but I was wrong about that. But, anyways, we're going to stick to the Unshorn Wizard. Now, as for personal integrity, yes, I actually thought he had that. Based on the other parts that I just stated, it seemed like he was intelligent, and the way he spoke to even others is that he would say what he thought was wrong or right about something, no matter who made the comment. It was funny, it's like with me and Unshorn Wizard, the only thing that he ever attacked me on that we actually kind of got into it was religion. Unshorn Wizard Ken was about religion. And it's funny because I was never really much into religion, but just even talking about it, he would attack me like, rah. It was actually funny because I still remember this one time. This was when me and Pooty Lube were still, yeah, sort of friends. And we were in LDAA, a group. And Ken and me were, he was attacking me. We're both going at it about religion in a post. And, you know, William, I told him, I was like, oh my God, it's kind of, driving me nuts, because he kept on going at me because I made another post. And he automatically assumed that I was basing it on religion, even though it was about anything. And he was like, oh, you're doing this, and you're gonna start this up again, and so it was funny because I thought it was so funny because William told me to tell him that William sent the message to tell him to f off. And I said, William told me to tell you to f off. And he responded, he goes, oh, he did. I was cracking up laughing. It was so funny because he was like, he did. So, anyways, okay, I thought I would give a joke there. So that's the only thing that me and him ever butted heads on. That was a really funny day. I was cracking up laughing about that. So, okay. Now back to okay, personal integrity. So what I've seen he did is that he actually said something. My dad's not one to really speak up about anything. I mean, that's why people always got the impression that my dad was a very kind person, a very good hearted person, because my dad was not a talker, you know, unless it was about certain things like politics or, things like that, and depending on who it is. Otherwise, my dad was hush hush. My mom was the voice in the relationship. So that's why my everybody always seen my dad as being the very good-hearted one, because he barely showed any emotion. He was just very calm, and like I said, the only emotion my dad showed mainly well, not well, I should say, in a bad way, but more expressive, was anger, which was scary. Even when I was a little kid, my dad, even got to the point where he'd get the leather belt and come after me and my sister, you know. And I mean, he looked like he was like red hot and everything else, you know. So my dad always expressed anger mainly, if he did express anything. Now, that's where I said that Unshorn Wizard was different in the way that he expressed when he was mad at me. Until the end, of course. But we're going to stick to the Unshorn Wizard because we're talking about trust and why I trusted him. Okay, so personal integrity. I remember, even thinking, based upon all of that, that it wouldn't even matter who was involved. It did get to the point where I seen that he was getting under the hood of the cult leader, and that's where I kind of backed away. I was like, it's like, yeah, I'm not sure if I still want to talk to him or, you know, even, you know, I wasn't sure. And because I wasn't at that time, like I said, for a long time I didn't realize that there was two different cult clans that Pooty Lube had ran, which, Ken was in one and I was in the other. Actually, Ken and John were in the same cult clan while I was in the one that actually was the original cult clan before William got the others, because the other one formed an LDAA afterwards when he got his own personal group started. Pooty Loop did, and he gained followers, and that's where Ken and John, they got to know him, and they became followers and built their way up to being clan members. So, anyways, I tried to test it out, and basically, and went to him for advice only. And that's where I thought it showed he had personal integrity, and he defended me against certain people that were involved in Shitsula Jennifer's hate group. So I actually thought he would actually most likely go through with it, even if it dealt with Pooty Lube William. But then I realized, I tried to ignore it. See, just like with my father, I tried to ignore it. Like when I found out that he was in a hate group by John Paul, I basically kind of ignored it and let it slide, just like it did with my father in the ways that he treated me, you know, and him letting my mom get away with things. That's exactly what I did with Ken. And I know it wasn't good, but then I just kind of felt like it was normal because that's just how my dad was too, in a certain way. He always put my mom first. So I was like, I kind of gave Ken the same thing. I was like, well, he's under that. He can't do much. That was the only thing that I really, seen that I just kind of acted like it wasn't going on, even though it was. Okay, equal. Was it equal? In a sense, it was equal in different ways. There was good things. For the most part, yes, he was honest with me. With if it didn't deal with Pooty Loop or William, like the hate group, he lied about that. Otherwise, he was mostly honest with me and, open, you know. So that's something my father didn't have. So it kind of went, a little bit with the, personal integrity, but back and forth. A little bit more than my father, well, actually, a lot more than my father. My father wouldn't defend me for worth beans for anybody, you know. That's just how my father is. He would never go out of his way to defend me. I mean, heck, with the times I was sexually harassed or, even raped or, sexually assaulted. He didn't do nothing, you know. But that's where, like with Ken, if it happened to be booty lube, no matter what he did, Ken didn't do anything if he was underneath the wrath of if it dealt with William and him getting involved. He had to do it sneakily behind William's back. But once William found out, that was the end of it. That's kind of like my dad and me, him showing empathy and admitting what was happening is wrong. Yet when he gets back to the mom, my mother, I should say, it's like, yeah, that didn't happen. That's exactly where Ken was. So, equal, no. Communication, see? That's where the ghosting came in. Just like my father. And I didn't realize my father was doing it until Ken started doing it to me. And you know why I probably realized that is because I actually trusted Ken. So when Ken did it to me, it actually hurt. When my father did it to me, it hurt a little bit, but I was used to it. I didn't know it was wrong. I ignored that. And I didn't realize it was really that bad. I didn't realize that ignoring someone and pretending they're not there, was actually not a good thing or not healthy in a relationship and not good for the person that they're doing it to, and basically is abuse. It is abuse. Not basically, it is abuse. So when Ken did it, it did actually hurt. Because when you trust somebody, it does hurt. I never trusted somebody before. I mean, even my own father, because I didn't have any of that other stuff that I had, like I said, with Ken, with my father. So my father was always the one that I looked up to and idolized, you know? So that's why it hurt more when Ken did it to me, is because that feeling of trust I never felt before, but like I'm, described in my writings, the storytelling I did, it's not a feeling I want to feel again because when I've been hurt in the past many times by others, I didn't have that feeling of trust that I never had before. So it's much harder when you trust somebody and they hurt you, especially the way that Ken did it, which was actually the most cruel and despicable way that anybody besides my three abusers ever did to me. So of course, it hurt, you know, extremely, a whole bunch. So, trust, like I just said, all those other things are important. So if we're looking at the Unshorn Wizard based upon what I said, that's where the trust built up until he became Unshorn Casanova, and that happened actually, I'd say, with not the recent bullying incident, but the one before that, where he went back to underneath the raft and actually basically blamed me for the whole thing happening. And also believing the lies that were so obvious. Which was also hurtful because, like I had stated, he was the first person that I practiced being completely open and honest to. And I never did that with my father, ever. So it was something new to me. Because, as you can see with my father, just talking to him, yeah, 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 Shelley, sure. I'm busy. I'm tired. Leave me alone. I don't feel good. Yeah, uh, you know. So I would actually even get abused by my mother. My mom would see that happening and she would be like, Shelley, you're really bothering your father. Leave him alone, or, put me down for talking to him even. So I got double abused, just for talking. and trying to have a conversation, a good positive conversation with my father. My own mother would, put me down and try to make me feel bad, you know. So, when Ken ended up believing the lies, or when things went down because Pootie Lube made everybody all go crazy and start their abuse on, make the abuse go worse and worse, and Ken ended up blaming me, I did feel guilty. And I guess that's because my abusers always made me feel guilty for things that I shouldn't have felt guilty for or felt, shameful for. And, that's something I did learn, like I stated in the video, based on the last, bullying incident, and based on communication and actions versus words. You know, I actually, realized that it wasn't my fault that, that happened, even in that he felt that way. He made that choice to believe those lies and go along with it. So it's not my fault. Just like I said, just a recent incident, I didn't even come to him, and heck, I didn't even know he was involved until, boom. So, that's where myself as the victim, you know, many victims blame themselves for things that really weren't their fault, you know. And as for trust, with me, many think, physical abuse harms somebody the most, but it's actually those, like I said, I compared it to my sexual, assaults, the abuse that I received from my 3 abusers. And I said that the 3 abusers damaged me more than any of the sexual assaults ever did. And it's the truth. Because the pain that I feel from losing the trust from the one person I opened up to based upon this, because I never had that with my 3 abusers, trust, ended up doing the worst thing I ever could possibly imagine, the most cruel, despicable thing. So, as you can see, my father, when it came to trust, it was not a healthy trust that I should have in my life in good, healthy, strong relationships. So, in comparison to what I had with my father and with Ken, you can see that there was actually, even though there was a lot of bad that happened with Ken, there was a lot of things that were good in that relationship in comparison to what I had with my father, that I didn't know actually was there and what it felt like. So, like I said, even with all the bad that happened with Unshorn Wizard to P. Bristly Diarist, I learned what is good and what I want in the relationships that I have in my life and what I don't want. So there's things that compared with him and my father that were alike, and there's things that were good that my father never had within Ken. So that's where, I compared the two and seen good and bad. As you can see that the 2 of them, they both were under the wrath of that leader and always threw me out. That was the one main thing that them 2 had in common. As for the bullying situation and with my father and the 3 abusers together, as to how that cycle of abuse worked. So that's where you can see that trust was very hard for me to even know what it was and what to even expect and what it feels like. So most of my relationships, like I said, I had very low expectations. So you can't really build trust with somebody when you have such low expectations and don't even get what you should at least expect within a relationship that's healthy, that actually feels good. Like I said, I had tested out being open and honest and actually getting certain things from Ken that I never got from others, that I seen that was actually something that felt good, you know. But I also seen things that he did that, I either even experienced with others or even with like my father as I'm comparing it to. So I weighed out, what's good and bad, you know, and with the, trust. And it was, I hate to say it, but I don't know if I liked that I actually felt that feeling of trust with him. I mean, it's a lesson learned, and realizing what trust actually is. Yes, yes, it was a good thing I learned what trust is, and that having low expectations of people was not a good thing for me, because I always ended up in very unhealthy relationships. At least I learned that with him. I didn't, I was hoping not to learn about the trust and him totally doing what he did, as cruel and despicable as he did. Like I said, I wish he would have just, blocked me and then took off. But no, he had to do the most cruel and despicable thing to me. So that made things where it was, traumatizing to me, because he was the first person I trusted. And for that trust to be ended in that way was extremely hard and traumatizing to me. So, trust. That deals with the word respect and what those letters stand for. And they are very important. In order to have the letter T that comes in the end of the word respect, you need all those other things in those letters as to what they mean in order to get trust within another person that's healthy and good in all types of relationships. Not just intimate, all types. Yeah. Don't listen to the clown from the Imbeciles Are Us, Carla. Yeah. She's really bright. So, this is for all relationships in order for them to be healthy. You need respect in them, and that's extremely important. And you can see how abuse, and even in, you know, with my three abusers, it can relate to even bullying. Like I said, bullying is just another word. You could say bullying anytime you want, but you know what? It's abuse. It's just another type of abuse. Just like there's physical abuse, sexual abuse, verbal, mental, psychological. It's all abuse, period. Just different words and saying different types. But all abuse is bad. And we all can play a part in continuing that cycle of abuse, as I've been discussing in all my videos, as to almost all of my videos, is how people play a part in continuing that cycle of abuse in all areas. Even bullying, you play a part in continuing all forms and types of abuse. I'm Shelley Rothus, and I'm a different kind of victim. See you next time.